Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about how to not be offended. And this is a bit of a tricky process and involves a couple of things. And the first thing you gotta do is you have to understand that when you're offended by an idea versus being offended by somebody's actions, it's like, okay, if you have a different political belief than me, I'm not going to be offended. If you spit on one of my family members, okay, now I'm offended. And so what we're talking about today specifically is being offended by someone's political ideas or religion. Somebody voting the wrong way. They voted for the wrong party. They voted for the party that you don't like, and because you don't like that party, that means that they voted for racism or oppression or, tyranny or whatever. You ascribe all of these evil, nasty things to the thing that you don't like to justify you not liking it, without actually knowing very much about it. Let's be honest, people don't tend to read a lot these days. We read headlines, form opinions based on headlines, and then every time somebody does something that we think they shouldn't do based on a headline, we get all upset and offended by that. That's not a very productive way to live your life, I would say. And so number one is really getting to a place of humility where you have to expect and understand that there's going to be people in this world who know things that you do not know. There are facts and systems of thoughts and there's logic out there too that you simply do not know yet. And other people may know some of them, and that may lead them to believe something that is completely different to what you would think is acceptable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. And of course, being offended doesn't make you right. And so how do we remove ourselves from the impulse to just be offended by everything? Well, one, we need to figure out what our identity is. Is our identity in being a member of a particular group, like a particular ideological group, whether that's the left or the right, conservative or liberal? And the reason that I want to talk about that first is because if we make that group, whichever group it happens to be, a big part of our identity, well then of course, anybody who attacks that group or tries to disprove something that the group believes, now they're trying to attack you. They're trying to attack your identity because you've associated that set of ideas with yourself. So every time someone tries to critique the idea, they're now critiquing you. And that's why people seem to be taking every single little bit of criticism or questioning as a personal attack. It's actually because they have embedded, that idea, that belief as a part of their identity. And one of my proposals is that first thing that we do is that we actually remove that from our identity. And now obviously we can never fully do this because our ideas influence the way we act, and so it's always going to be part of us. There's always going to be some fundamental belief that is a part of us, but we can do it pretty well for a lot of political beliefs that are out there. And we want to get to a place where somebody questioning, say, capitalism or socialism, if you're a socialism, doesn't throw you completely off the rails and has you throwing a temper tantrum just because someone questioned a certain political system that you happen to believe in. And part of that is focusing down on your actions instead of whichever group you say you're a part of. So for example, I do not identify as a conservative. I identify as someone who is always willing to learn and is constantly trying to verify facts and knowledge in order to acquire the truth. If the truth happens to lead me to be more conservative in my values, fine. If it happens to lead me to be more liberal in some cases, that is also fine. You see the difference there? I have disconnected my own identity from these labels, and that has now re-empowered me to say, hey, let's just question all of these things and see and verify it and try to disprove my own ideas. And by doing that, I can actually create a pretty robust worldview without getting too attached to it, because again, going back to the beginning, we're talking about having the humility to understand that there's always going to be someone who knows something that you don't know, and you want to be able to account for that in your thinking. And so what that may sound like, it may go something like this, hey, if this set of facts turns out to be true, then I will believe X, I will believe this about it. But if someone can prove this about that, then I would change my opinion to this. You want to be able to create a whole bunch of sets and boundaries for yourself, so that you can constantly be learning and evolving. You don't want to be stagnant in your ideas. You want to be constantly drilling down finer details, finer nuances. And part of that is being able to learn as much as possible. And so if you're offended by people proposing contrary ideas to yours, well, you're not going to be able to learn as much, because sometimes the greatest details of my worldview and learning have come from listening to people who think something completely opposite of me, but they have some good facts intertwined in there, and I was able to take those, look at them and compare them and adjust them and see if I need to change my worldview a bit to fit them in. And I was actually able to create more depth, more nuance, more details in my worldview to account for the new facts that other person had presented. So I didn't necessarily change my mind, but what I ended up doing is I evolved it to account for more detail, more and nuance. And that is honestly a huge superpower in today's day and age, because you can see multiple layers to life, and it's so useful, because while everyone is busy screaming at each other, left and right, you could say, well, those people think this, and if I adjusted this a little bit and cross-referenced it with that, then perhaps we could come to this sort of solution that is somewhere sort of in the middle. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you could see more layers of depth to reality that apparently it appears that most people, they just can't. And so how to not be offended, comes from a couple of things. It's, having humility to expect that there's going to be things that you don't know. And two, it's just removing your identity as much as possible from particular labels. So if someone questions the current conservative party, I don't get offended by that. I don't immediately have a knee-jerk reaction and be like, wow, well, you're liberal this and that and this and this, and you should be ashamed of yourself because you're this. It's like, that's interesting. And it's not an attack on me, it's just an attack on a particular party that I may or may not be inclined to vote for. And I could take a step back and say, this person thinks this. Why do they think that? Is there something there that I can learn? Is there something that I need to address, or can I disprove it, easily? And then of course I go about, deciding, is it worth my time to engage with this person? Because obviously not every single person is, in a place to actually have a fruitful discussion with you. And so it also comes back to just being able to walk away, knowing the right time and place to have a conversation is absolutely crucial. People are not in a place to learn from you if they're incredibly angry and screaming at you. And so if you encounter people like that, just do your best to swallow your pride and say, hey man, you know what? Let's not have this conversation now. Let's just walk away. Whatever you gotta do, walk away and go about your day. Don't let them ruin your day. Don't let them get your emotions all up in a fire. And I know you feel so tempted to try to give this person the facts and tell them what's up and let them know that they severely offended you, blah, 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 whatever. But think about it. That's not going to do them any good, because they're in no place to actually learn right now. And so your words will be wasted, because nobody will learn anything. And, it's not good for you either, because you just walk away feeling frustrated and upset, and kind of ruins your day. And all the good, cool things that you could have been working on, now are going to be hindered because you let that one person get you upset. And so being willing to walk away, have humility to know that people know things that you don't know, and disassociate your identity from labels of ideas, and instead, you'll have to decide for yourself what you want to do. But I tend to identify as someone who is constantly learning and constantly seeking out truth and doesn't care where it comes from, as long as it makes sense, as long as it makes rational, logical sense. I don't really care what label it carries, as long as it's the truth. And so even if you disagree with me, you're never going to offend me, because I'm always open to learning. And that would be my advice to you guys. I hope you had a good time listening to me and enjoying this painting. And please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.